What's up, everybody? Grab your latte, grab your frappuccino, grab whatever the hell you're drinking. This is the coffee shop. I'm your host, Jobbers and Goons, and apologies in advance if you hear any sounds in the background, even though I have music playing, so you won't. I'm outside with it because it's beautiful outside, and happy Easter to those who celebrate it, and just have a wonderful Sunday to those who don't. But back on topic, this is another Blitz battle. I've been fascinated with comics versus anime recently, just finding matchups that are kind of cool. And one I found is a very resilient character that's been on this channel already, Vampire Hunter D. And he's going to have his hands full today because he's going against one of the strongest characters in comics, Mandrakk, the multiversal consuming vampire from DC. If these two were to clash, who do I think would win? If you guys don't know what Blitz battle is, it's basically a shortened versus battle where I briefly give my description of both characters and then who I think would win. If you want a more researched, more detailed, and a longer battle, run the likes up on this and comment down below, and I'll do so again. But without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy this, and let's begin. So, first up, let's talk about Mandrakk. What makes Mandrakk so potent as a character? Well, Mandrakk's one of the coolest villains in DC, and is most famous from his Cosmic Armor Superman beef. He was a character in which basically a monitor gone wrong, with monitors being inherently outerversal in DC, as they are multiple layers beyond where, for example, realms of archetypes. So they definitely are outerversal, and he's a threat to them. And the monitors made a suit to basically combat him because they needed a weapon against him. And this came in the form of eventually being Cosmic Armor Superman. However, I do feel like a lot of people misconstrue Mandrakk's power here, in which I think they kind of underrate him. He was definitely giving Cosmic Armor Superman the hands. Cosmic Armor Superman sees Limbo as like a tiny object, obviously representing him transcending it. He, or at least just being massively beyond it. He can see the reader. He has his own hyper story that is like this shortened story that only belongs to him that constantly writes itself. So he has his own little narrative going, which is pretty dope. And he was the fusion of Superman and Ultraman. And at this point, Mandrakk was putting the hands on him, despite all the crazy scaling Cass has, and was only stopped briefly when he was cast into the Overvoid beyond creation, basically where stories go to die and are birthed from. And this is interesting because he does come back later, and he does survive this. So he doesn't scale to the Overvoid per se, like he's not above it or anything. But definitely did stop him for a while, although he did survive. But overall, his abilities as a reality warper, as he inherently would have these things as a monitor, or someone that scales to them, he obviously has his regular attack potency. You could argue he can attack your narrative, which I would argue he did against Cass. It made it very hard for the Hyperstory to fight back. And overall, his outerversal scaling and resiliency makes him a very formidable opponent. But on the other side, we have D from Vampire Hunter D. D being a contradiction of sort, being obviously half Dhampir vampire. So he was like a walking contradiction in his story. And his power only progressed throughout the manga and the light novels. If you haven't read them, they get kind of crazy. So D has, first of all, survived realms such as ones of non-existence entirely, like it was beyond everything, and he still survived it. He scaled to like an infinite desert where he stabbed its heart casually. Had a whole bunch of crazy feats, but then the craziest part that we have to talk about is obviously his scaling to the Akashic records, right? So these artifacts contain everything. They contain existence, non-existence, imagination, stories, storytelling, characters, emotions, all these archetypal concepts, right? Like all these things belong in the Akashic records. They have everything they're supposed to. It would be like the Book of Creation and beyond. And And what's crazy about this is not only was D able to combat this, and he was able to nullify it completely, as in, like, it couldn't contain him or follow him or stop him. He was beyond it. He absorbed it and is able to control it. So, obviously, he has high order scaling. And the reality warping he can do with this, the fact that he could basically change everything and survive everything, is absolutely nuts. And D, at his absolute peak, is one of the toughest characters in fiction to beat. So, if these two monsters of their own verses were to clash, like 1v1, who do I think would win? Well, I do see Mandrakk taking the early edge, right? Like, he's so aggressive as a character, violent, obviously has amazing outerversal feats, and would be able to apply pressure early to D. However, D, scaling beyond the records, and his own scaling being wonky itself, I do believe eventually he would shift the narrative in a function that's even higher than Cass, and would be able to combat and cast out Mandrakk eventually after a hard-fought battle. So my answer to the Blitz battle question of who would win between D and Mandrakk, I favor D at his peak versus Mandrakk at his peak. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you agree or disagree, let me know in the comment section down below. Keep it civil. Have a good time. This was The Coffee Shop. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see y'all later. Peace.